They said family is a shelter. But that night, surrounded by their piercing eyes, I felt like prey. Every word at the table was sharpened, every silence heavier than stone. I wasn't a husband, not a brother. I was the intruder. And when the will was read, I realized I wasn't just trapped in their house, I was trapped in their game. My name is William Smith. I'm 42 years old. I work as a mid-level manager in logistics. For 15 years, I have been the son-in-law of the Harris family. I married Nora because I loved her warmth, not her fortune. Yet in their eyes, I have always been less. An outsider who entered through the back door. From the very beginning, I learned that silence was safer than words. At dinners, I was the man who nodded politely, who never spoke too loudly. But silence became its own prison. Every pause at the table, every glance, reminded me that I was tolerated, never embraced. When Nora's father died, we returned to her childhood home. The mansion was filled with mourning on the surface, but I could feel the tension beneath. Edward moved with the authority of a man already dividing what was not yet his. Catherine's eyes lingered on me too long, sharp and searching. Helen, the widow, spoke in hushed tones. Yet every sentence carried disdain. That night we gathered at the long dining table. Nora sat beside me, her hand resting lightly on mine, as if to say, "Endure just a little longer." Across from me, Edward raised his glass. "To family," he said. His voice was smooth, but his stare cut like glass. I forced a smile. "To family," I answered, though the word tasted bitter. Catherine leaned forward, lips curling in something that was not quite a smile. "William, it must feel strange, doesn't it, sitting here tonight in this house at such a time?" Nora's voice rose, sharp with warning. "Catherine, enough," but I pressed her hand gently. "It's all right," I whispered, though it wasn't. Helen's voice then sliced through the silence. "My late husband was generous, too generous, especially with those who were not truly his own." Nora gasped. "Mother, please stop." Helen's eyes never left me. Some people forget whose table they sit at. The words struck harder than a slap. I clenched my jaw, wanting to speak, wanting to fight back. But I swallowed the reply. For years I had learned, words would not win me respect here. Only silence kept the peace, and even that peace was poisoned. Later that night, lying awake in the guest room, I could feel the house around me, the creak of the stairs, the faint voices behind closed doors. Not grief, whispers of calculation, papers ready to be signed, promises waiting to be broken. Nora turned toward me in the dark. Her voice was soft. "Don't let them get to you. Tomorrow will be over soon." I stared at the ceiling. Will it? Or is tomorrow just the start? The morning came heavy. In the study, the oak table shone like judgment. Edward drummed his fingers against the wood. Catherine's smile was cold. Helen stared out the window, refusing to even glance at me. And me, I stood there, every eye weighing me down, reminding me I was not husband, not brother, not son, only a piece. A pawn waiting to be moved. I told myself to keep still, to survive. But something in me stirred, a spark I had buried under years of silence, a refusal to remain the man they despised, because love had brought me into this family. But survival would demand something more, and that night was only the beginning. The lawyer's voice filled the study, calm but heavy. Edward's name was spoken first, heir to the lion's share of the estate. Catherine, with properties and accounts. Lawrence, reduced to a minor stake in the company. Nora, a modest portion, and then my name. "An additional trust," the lawyer said, "established by Mr. Harris in the name of William Smith, for his care and responsibility." The room froze. Every head turned. I felt their stares like knives. Helen's voice cut through. "This is a mistake. My husband would never waste his estate on him." The lawyer adjusted his glasses. "It is clearly signed. His decision was deliberate." Catherine leaned forward, eyes glittering. "Deliberate?" Father was precise, yes, but never sentimental. "William, surely you know why he left this for you." I shook my head, my throat dry. "I don't. I never asked for this. I didn't know." Edward's tone was soft, dangerous. "You expect us to believe that? That Father simply gave you a trust out of thin air?" Nora's voice trembled but carried strength. Yes, because he trusted him. That was Father's choice. Helen snapped back, voice rising. Trusted. He was sick, weak, and William sat at his bedside, always whispering. Who knows what poison he planted? I clenched my fists. That's not true. I never— Then explain it, Catherine interrupted. Her smile was thin, cruel. Explain why his name is here. What secret did you share with Father? I have no secret, I said, though my voice cracked. The lawyer cleared his throat. There is also a sealed envelope regarding this trust. Mr. Harris instructed it to be opened with the will. He reached into his briefcase, pulling out a small envelope, the Harris seal unbroken. My name written across it. Helen's voice sliced the air. We will not open it. My husband's judgment was clouded. This entire section should be disregarded. Catherine tilted her head. Why hide it, Mother, if it's meaningless? Let us hear it. Edward's eyes narrowed. Open it. Let us see what Father truly intended. Helen's hand struck the table. No, this house has seen enough disgrace already. The room crackled with tension. Lawrence shifted, finally speaking in a low voice. Maybe we should hear it, for Father's sake. Helen's glare silenced him. Do not speak, boy. You know nothing of what Father wanted. I found my voice, though it shook. If it concerns me, then I have the right to hear it. Helen turned, her words like ice. You have no rights here. You are not blood. You are a guest, nothing more. Nora rose, her voice sharp with fury. That's enough. He is my husband. If you insult him, you insult me. The silence that followed was thick. The lawyer hesitated, then placed the envelope on the table, unopened, waiting. Edward leaned back, his calmness more terrifying than Helen's rage. Perhaps we should not see this as conflict. A trust in William's name could be an opportunity, if he knows how to use it wisely. His eyes locked on me, a warning, a promise. I realized then he was not angry, he was plotting, and in his eyes I was no longer just Nora's husband. I was a piece to be moved. I looked around the table. Helen's contempt, Catherine's cruel amusement, Lawrence's nervous silence, Edward's quiet calculation, Nora's trembling hand gripping mine. The envelope lay between us, heavy as stone. And I understood. I was no longer the tolerated outsider. I had become something far more dangerous. A pawn in their game. Catherine found me in the drawing room later that evening. The air was heavy, filled with the echo of what had been said in the study. She stood near the window, her voice soft, almost kind. William, she began, I hope you don't let Mother's words linger. She lashes out when she's hurt. You know grief makes people cruel. I met her gaze, steady but wary. I've lived in this house long enough to know cruelty doesn't need grief. She smiled faintly. Fair enough. Then you must also know how important it is to hold this family together. Father left. Unfinished matters. A few properties, a business deal. If you helped us, just put your name where ours cannot, it would keep everything safe, and it would give you a stronger place here. She opened a folder and slid it toward me. Contracts, legal papers. Her eyes gleamed. Just one signature, she whispered, and suddenly you're not invisible. You're one of us. I stared at the pages. So that's what I am to you. A name on paper. Before she could answer, Edward walked in. His steps were measured, his expression calm, like he had planned this moment. He poured a drink, swirling the glass. Catherine is right, he said smoothly. One stroke of your pen could protect this family. If you refuse— He raised his eyes to me, cold and certain. Then when everything falls apart, don't say I didn't warn you. I clenched my fists. You talk about family, but all I hear is leverage. Edward smirked. Leverage is how families survive. Catherine leaned closer, her voice like honey laced with venom. You've sat here for 15 years, William, silent, overlooked. Don't you want them to see you as more than nothing? Her words hit harder than Helen's scorn. Nothing. Always nothing. Before I could speak, Nora's voice cut through from the doorway. Enough! She strode in, anger trembling in her every step. She snatched the folder from the table, her hands shaking. He won't sign. He won't be dragged into your games. Edward's smile vanished. Be careful, Nora. Speaking for him only makes him weaker. Nora's eyes burned. No, protecting him makes him stronger. Stronger than any of you. Catherine scoffed, her patience thinning. You're blind. We're offering him a chance. Without us, he'll always be an outsider. Then let him be an outsider, Nora shot back. At least he'll be free. The tension snapped tighter. And then I realized Helen was standing in the doorway, watching, her silence heavier than any words. When she finally spoke, her voice was ice. Free? He will never be free. He's only useful when he signs what others cannot. That is his place. That is all he'll ever be. I felt her words pierce straight through me. A verdict. Something in Nora broke. With a sudden motion, she tore one of the contracts in half. The sound ripped through the room. Enough, she cried. He is not your pawn. Edward set his glass down hard, his calm cracking. You've made a mistake, Nora, both of you, and mistakes here are never forgiven. I stood frozen, Nora clutching my arm, Catherine glaring, Edward's eyes sharp with warning, Helen's disdain etched like stone. And I understood. This was no offer. It was a cage. A chain disguised as opportunity. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the dark, Nora's breathing soft beside me, and I knew silence was no longer protection. Silence would only bury me deeper. They would not let me go. Not now. I had stepped into their game, and soon I would have to decide, pawn or something else entirely. I found Lawrence in the library late that night. The smell of whiskey hit me before his words did. His head rested against the shelf, papers scattered across the table. Lawrence, I said quietly, what are you doing here? He looked up, his eyes red, his hand clutching a glass too tightly. I'm signing my freedom, he slurred, or maybe my death. Hard to tell the difference. I stepped closer, scanning the papers, legal documents, renouncing his share of the inheritance. My chest tightened. Edward gave you this? I asked. Lawrence let out a broken laugh. Gave? No. He pressed it into my hand and reminded me of my debts. Debts I can't pay. If I don't sign, the creditors will, and they won't be as kind. I stared at him, anger burning in my gut. He's blackmailing you. You can't let him do this. Lawrence's eyes watered. He leaned closer, his voice low, almost pleading. You're the only one who's ever treated me like a man, William. Not like a weakling, not like a burden. But if you try to save me, you'll make yourself their enemy. They'll crush you. Before I could answer, footsteps echoed in the hall. Edward appeared in the doorway, his shadow stretching long. He glanced at the papers, then at me, his smile thin. Ah, he said smoothly. So you found my little arrangement. I warned him it wasn't wise to drink and talk, but Lawrence has always been careless. Careless? I snapped. You're forcing your own brother to give up his inheritance. Edward's eyes narrowed, though his voice stayed calm. I'm protecting him. He'd gamble it away in a week. Better it stays in responsible hands. Mine. Lawrence buried his face in his hands. Just leave it, William, please. You can't fight him. Edward stepped closer, his tone sharpened. He's right. You've been here long enough to know. This family doesn't forgive betrayal. Choose carefully before you put yourself in the wrong corner. I wanted to strike him, to tear the papers in half, but Lawrence's trembling stopped me. His shame was heavier than any chains Edward could bind him with. The next day, Helen gathered the family in the dining hall. She stood at the head of the table, black dress flowing like a judge's robe. Her eyes found me. I've tolerated much, she said, her voice cold, but now I see my late husband's mistake more clearly than ever. He welcomed a man into this family who never belonged, a man who feeds at our table but gives nothing in return, a man who hides behind my daughter's skirt. Her words sliced deeper than any knife. Nora's face flushed with rage. Mother, stop humiliating him! Helen cut her off with a raised hand. No, child. He must hear this. He must know his place. I stood frozen, every gaze pressing down on me. Catherine's smirk, Edward's calm calculation, Lawrence's downcast eyes. I tried to speak, but Helen's voice thundered again. You are nothing here, William. A hanger-on, a leech. Without Nora, you are dust in the wind. The room was silent, but the silence was worse than noise. Every second stretched like a blade against my skin. Then I heard my own voice, raw, surprising even myself. I may not be your blood, I may not be your son, but I am not nothing, and one day you will regret treating me as if I were." Helen's eyes blazed, but she said nothing. Edward's smile returned, faint, unreadable. Catherine's laugh was soft, mocking. Nora clutched my hand so tightly it almost hurt. Lawrence stared at me through his haze of shame, whispering words only I could hear. "Careful, William. They'll come for you next." And I knew he was right. I was no longer a ghost in their house. I had stepped into the line of fire. I wasn't looking for anything. I only wanted air, a moment away from the whispers and the pressure of their eyes. But in the quiet study, while my fingers drifted over the old books on the shelf, something slipped loose. A thin envelope, yellowed with time, tucked between two heavy volumes. My name was on it. I hesitated, then broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet, the handwriting uneven but firm. It was his, the hand of my father-in-law. "William, if you read this, I'm gone. I have watched you in silence, and I know this. You carry a dignity my children do not. They chase wealth, but you guard what is priceless, integrity. Do not let them take it from you. One day, they will try." My throat tightened. For years I had lived as their shadow, their tolerated intruder. Yet here was proof that at least one man had seen me, truly seen me. I folded the letter carefully, slipping it into my pocket like a hidden shield. But as the night wore on, that fragile comfort was tested. We gathered again for dinner. It was supposed to be a family meal, a moment of civility, but it felt more like a courtroom. Every glance weighed me. Every silence accused me. Edward raised his glass, his smile practiced, his voice smooth. "A toast," he said, his eyes locked on me. "To William, the man of the hour. Who would have thought Father trusted him so deeply? A remarkable achievement for someone who brought nothing to the table." Laughter rippled. Catherine's sharp, Helen's bitter, Lawrence's nervous. My stomach turned. Nora bristled beside me. "Edward, enough." He tilted his head, mocking. "Why?" "I mean it sincerely. Perhaps William can teach us all how to rise above our station, how to turn nothing into something." I gripped my fork until my knuckles whitened. The letter in my pocket seemed to burn, reminding me of words I had barely dared to believe. "I didn't ask for any of this," I said quietly. Edward leaned forward. "And yet here you are, named in the will, placed in Father's trust, almost as if you've been playing a long game the rest of us failed to see." Helen's voice cut in, sharp as steel. "Exactly. He's been hiding behind Nora all these years, and now he reaps what he never earned." Nora slammed her hand on the table. "Stop it! You're turning this house into a circus. Father wouldn't have wanted this." Edward chuckled, raising his glass higher. "Oh, I think Father knew exactly what he was doing. He planted a snake at our table, and now we're expected to feed it." The words sliced through me. A snake, a pawn, a parasite. I looked around the table, at their faces, and for a moment I felt utterly alone. Even Nora's hand gripping mine couldn't lift the weight pressing on me. I thought of walking away, letting silence swallow me again, as it always had. But the letter's words echoed in my mind. "They will try to take your dignity. Do not let them." I took a slow breath. My voice shook, but I spoke. "You can laugh at me. You can call me what you like. But I know one thing. Your father saw something in me none of you ever will. And that's enough." The room went still. Edward's smile faded. Helen's eyes narrowed. Catherine's fork paused mid-air. For a moment, I thought I had silenced them. Then Edward laughed softly, darkly. "Careful, William. Pride is dangerous in this house. It tends to get broken." The table erupted in chatter again, but the damage was done. I had spoken, and I could not take it back. My heart pounded as I realized what line I had just crossed. I wasn't their silent pawn anymore. I had chosen to stand. But standing meant war. The day of the formal reading arrived. The study was heavy with silence, the air thick as though the walls themselves held their breath. The lawyer placed the final documents on the table, but I could feel the shift before a word was spoken. This wasn't about the will anymore. It was about me. Edward leaned forward, sliding a folder across the polished wood. "William," he said smoothly, "Father entrusted you with something. but we both know you're not equipped to handle it. Sign this transfer. Put it back into our hands, where it belongs." Catherine's smile followed, sweet on the surface, sharp underneath. "It's the sensible choice. You'll avoid trouble, and you'll earn our gratitude. Isn't that what you want? To finally be seen as part of us?" I looked at the folder. Contracts, neat and binding. My signature was the only thing missing. Nora's hand found mine under the table. Her whisper trembled. "Don't do it." Helen's eyes burned into me. "Listen to them. Sign it. Stop pretending you are more than you are." I felt every gaze pressing down, demanding I surrender. The letter in my pocket seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Integrity. That was what he had seen in me. And this was the moment it mattered. I pushed the folder back. "No." The word fell heavy. Edward's calm cracked. "No?" His voice rose, sharper now. "Do you have any idea what you're refusing?" "I know exactly," I said, forcing my voice steady. "I know what you've been doing, Edward. The companies father built didn't simply shrink overnight. You drained them. You funneled profits through shell corporations, hiding money while your siblings thought the business was failing." A ripple went through the room. Catherine's smile faltered. Lawrence looked up sharply, his face pale. Edward leaned across the table, his jaw tight. "Careful what you say." "Careful," I snapped. "You've controlled this family by keeping them weak. Lawrence, you buried him under debts you arranged. Catherine, you promised her scraps while you hid the fortune. Even Helen," I caught her glare but pressed on, "you let her believe she was powerless while you signed papers behind her back." Helen gasped, turning to Edward. "Is this true?" Edward slammed his fist on the table. "Lies, all of it. You think anyone here will believe you over me?" Catherine tried to regain control, her voice honeyed but shaking. "William, stop this nonsense. You don't understand the complexities of business. Don't embarrass yourself." I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. "I understand enough. I understand that everything you've done was never about protecting this family. It was about power, and I won't be part of it." The room erupted. Lawrence half rose, his voice breaking. "Is it true, Edward? Did you use me?" Helen's voice thundered. "Answer him!" Edward's eyes darted, fury flashing. "I did what I had to do. This family needs strength, and strength doesn't come from weakness or from outsiders pretending they belong." I felt my blood pound. Then maybe strength isn't what this family needs. Maybe it needs truth. For a moment, silence, heavy, electric. Then the shouting began. Helen demanding explanations, Catherine hissing threats, Lawrence trembling between anger and fear. Through it all, Edward's eyes locked on mine, cold, burning. "You've made yourself my enemy, William," he said, his voice low but venomous, "and enemies don't last long in this family." I didn't look away. Then maybe it's time someone did. The study boiled with voices, accusations, denials, papers scattered like ash. And in the center of the storm I stood trembling but unbroken. For the first time I wasn't silent. For the first time they saw me, not as a pawn, not as a shadow, but as a man who refused to bend. The room was still echoing with shouts when Edward rose to his feet. His glass toppled, shattering on the floor, but he didn't notice. His face was red, his voice thundered. "You dare accuse me?" he roared. "You, who are nothing but a parasite in this house. 15 years, you've eaten at our table, slept under our roof, and now you spit in our faces. You are nothing but a leech, an ingrate living off scraps." His words struck like blows. I stood frozen, my hands clenched, but before I could speak, Helen's voice cut across the room. "Edward is right," she said coldly. "You've brought us nothing, William, nothing but shame. You were never one of us. You are a man who clings to my daughter's skirts, because without her, you'd still be rotting in mediocrity." Catherine leaned back in her chair, her laugh soft and cruel. "I almost admire you, William. It takes courage to pretend this long, but courage doesn't make you family. You'll always be the man staring in through the window." The heat in my chest swelled, words rising to my lips, but before I could answer, Nora's voice broke through. Firm, clear. "Enough." The room stilled. Nora stepped forward, her eyes blazing. "Stop speaking to him like that. Stop treating him as though he is nothing." Helen turned sharply. "Nora, no. Nora interrupted, her voice trembling with anger but steady in its truth. If you call him a parasite, then you call me one too. If you treat him as nothing, then you treat me as nothing. He is my husband. If you despise him, you despise me. Edward sneered. Don't be foolish. This is not about you. This is about him and the insult he's made to our family. Nora's voice rose, stronger now. He is this family. For 15 years he has endured your scorn, your whispers, your cruelty. He has stood by me when you turned your backs. He has given more loyalty to this name than any of you. Catherine smirked. Loyalty? Don't romanticize what doesn't exist. Nora's hand slammed against the table. The sound cracked like thunder. Father saw it. He wrote it in his will. He trusted William more than any of you, and if he were here, he would be ashamed of the way you spit on his choice. Silence followed. Even Edward faltered, his jaw tightening. I stared at Nora, stunned. She had always been quiet in these battles, caught between me and her blood. But now she stood like a shield, her voice defiant against them all. Helen's face hardened. You dare accuse your own blood for him? Nora turned to her, tears shining in her eyes, but her voice steady. I dare, because if you keep tearing him down, you tear me down too, and Father will never forgive you for that. For a moment, the room was silent, but charged, every breath sharp. Edward's fists clenched at his sides. You've chosen poorly, Nora. Very poorly. But she did not back down. No, she said softly. For the first time, I've chosen exactly right. I felt my chest tighten, not with fear, but with something else. Strength. For the first time in years, I wasn't standing alone. Nora's words wrapped around me like armor. And as Edward glared, Catherine smirked and Helen seethed. I understood. This battle was no longer just mine. We were standing together now. And that changed everything. The shouting ebbed like a storm breaking against stone. Papers lay torn across the table, glasses shattered, accusations still hanging in the air like smoke after fire. Edward stood rigid, his mask of calm stripped away, his fury exposed for everyone to see. His silence spoke louder than his threats. He had been caught, though not destroyed. Helen refused to meet my eyes. She clutched her handkerchief like a weapon, muttering about betrayal, about outsiders who never should have been allowed through her doors. Catherine's smirk returned, thin and sharp, as if to say, you won one battle, William. But the war is far from over. Lawrence sat pale and trembling, the truth pressing down on him harder than his debts ever had. For the first time, I saw him look at Edward not as a brother, but as a man who had used him like a pawn. The lawyer cleared his throat, but no one listened. The reading of the will had been reduced to ashes. The Harris family had shown its true face, and in the center of it, I stood with Nora's hand in mine. Edward's voice finally broke the silence. Low, measured, dangerous. You think this changes anything? You've humiliated yourself. You've humiliated us. And when this dust settles, you'll see, you don't belong here. You never did. I met his eyes. My voice was steady, though my heart thundered. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'll never belong. But at least I won't kneel to lies. Catherine's laugh was soft, mocking. Such noble words. But nobility doesn't pay bills, William. And this house, it eats men like you alive. Nora answered before I could. Then let it try. He's stronger than all of you realize. For the first time, I saw doubt flicker in Edward's eyes. Small, fleeting, but real. The night ended without resolution. Edward stalked away. Catherine whispered venom into Helen's ear. Lawrence drank himself into silence. The envelope with my name remained unopened, its weight still pressing on the room like an unsolved riddle. As I left the study, I knew the battle wasn't over. Darkness clung to this family like ivy on stone, deep, stubborn, impossible to tear away in a single night. But something had shifted, not in them, in me. For years I had lived half in shadow, half in silence. I had let their scorn define me. But not anymore. I had spoken. I had stood. And though it may cost me more than I can yet imagine, I had held on to the one thing they could never steal. My dignity. Standing by the doorway, I looked back at the room one last time. Their faces were twisted in anger, in calculation, in fear. I felt no triumph, only clarity. Perhaps I would always be an outsider. Perhaps I would never share their blood or carry their name. But belonging isn't about blood. It isn't about wealth. It's about dignity, the courage to stand your ground, even when the family you married into tries to swallow you whole. And for the first time in 15 years, I no longer feared being swallowed. I had finally found my place, not in their house, but in myself.